Welcome, everybody. We are live from Doola HQ in New York City for another weekly live, this time coming live on a Thursday. And today's topic is going to be walking through one of my favorite topics. And I don't think that's quite normal, but I do think normal is a dishwasher setting if I have to add that in. Today's topic is we launched What Now? How to Stay Compliant. So we're going to talk through after you launch a business. It's exciting. You should pop the champagne. You're stoked, but the journey just begins then. You started your LLC. Now, what do you do to keep the business compliant? So I want to give a crash course today in the top mistakes founders make, how to actually keep your business compliant. There's a 3-part checklist here, and ways that we can help potentially do this too. I love the live chat. So if anyone has questions, pop them in the chat. I'll pop them up on the screen right here. And if at any moment you have questions or you want to book a demo or you want to talk to someone on the team, free consultation, you can scan this QR code right here and you can chat to talk through formation, bookkeeping, taxes, business banking, anything for your e-commerce business. So with that, let's jump in. I want to start things off with, you've launched a business, congrats. I think getting started is actually usually the hardest thing for most people. I think most people don't get started because they're not scared, but they're scared of what others will think about them. So I used to always wonder why a lot of these courses would always start with a mindset section, but I understand the mindset is so key because oftentimes your biggest enemy is in your head. You're holding yourself back from getting started. So you've taken that first plunge. I think starting is the hardest part in anything in life. It's not hard to work out. It's hard to get to the gym. Once you're in the gym, how many times do you get there and just decide to leave? No, it's getting there, which is hard. Or buying the healthy food at the grocery store, whatever you want to say, whatever the analogy is. So congrats on launching. Now, I want to actually go through what compliance means. The way I think about compliance is keeping your business in order so that you don't face fines. That's one way you can potentially do it. And the other part I'd say is that so your business doesn't get dissolved. Now, you could then ask, okay, why are there fines or why would my business get dissolved? There are certain things that as a business you have to do. There's taxes you have to pay, and there's filings you have to file to ensure that your business is in good standing. So I think that's really what it comes down to. There's a cost to running a business. There is. These are taxes. The world runs on taxes. What are the two certainties in life? Death and taxes. So you can be upset about that, or you can say, hey, it's the reality, and it is the reality. Okay, so now there is compliance. You're going to have to deal with this. There is no world or way where you're not going to have to deal with compliance. Zero way. So mindset, you've started the business. You've realized, okay, this is something you're going to have to solve. Let's go through the 3-part compliance checklist. So the very first thing is I would break this up into 3 buckets. The first bucket is federal compliance, and I'll explain what each of these are. There's federal compliance, there's state compliance, and then you can think of your ongoing bookkeeping or accounting. Those terms are used interchangeably. Federal compliance, state compliance, ongoing bookkeeping, and accounting. And these are the 3 key buckets in my head for staying compliant and keeping a business compliant. So let's start with federal compliance. The first thing, which happens usually at time of formation, is getting your EIN or your employee identification number. The way I describe this is think of this as your social security number for your business. An individual in the US who's a citizen has a social. This social security number ties the individual to the country, and there's a number for it. Think of the EIN as the same thing. It's the social security number for the business. So instead of individual, IRS, and social, it's business, IRS, and EIN. That's the easiest way I'd think about it. Now, getting the EIN is critical because it unlocks the ability to get business banking, and it's required for filing your taxes too. So the first thing is get an EIN if you haven't done this already. If you're a US citizen, you can get it online at the IRS's website. If you're a non-US citizen, unfortunately, you have to fax forms to the IRS. Yes, we almost have flying cars and instant telepathy to communicate, but you still have to fax a form to the IRS, or you can mail it in. I recommend fax, it's faster. The second thing is as a business, you're going to have to file annual federal taxes. Now, I won't do a full deep dive into tax filing requirements depending on entity type, but there is going to be an annual obligation. If you're a US citizen, depending on what type of entity you have, single member LLC, multiple member LLC, if you have an S Corp election, by default, an LLC is a pass-through entity, which means you then file taxes on your personal tax return. So it's pass-through. Any profits or revenues you generate, you then pay taxes on your individual tax return. However, if you're a non-US resident, I'll quickly touch on this. You might not have to pay taxes or income tax in the US, but there still is an annual federal tax filing requirement, an informational filing requirement, This is Form 5472 with the Pro Forma 1120. Now, again, I won't go fully deep here, but the point is you're going to have some filing obligation. You might not have to pay taxes in the US, or it might be pass through, or maybe you'd have tax savings due to the S Corp election, but there is some filing. So within federal compliance, get your EIN, typically done at time of formation, and then file your annual federal taxes. The third bucket is if you pay contractors. There's this other filing, this 1099, and there's contractor requirements. So we won't go very deep there now, but if you do pay contractors, just keep in mind that there is going to be an additional compliance requirement there. Okay. Again, I will encourage anyone in the chat, if you have questions, please pop them in. We have a comment here from Gautam. Hey, what's up, Gautam? Hey, how you doing? I'm doing fantastic. So that's federal compliance. Next, let's go into state compliance. So again, there's three buckets: federal compliance, now state compliance. For state compliance, the first thing is there's this annual report or a franchise tax. In Delaware, it's called the franchise fee. In Wyoming, it's called the annual report. This is the annual state fee or tax. Now, you might wonder, why do you have to pay it? Well, there's a cost to running a business. The state wants to collect that tax. And then you might say, okay, why is the state charging me? Well, you get to form your business in the state. So states can obviously now have different benefits and incentives to get you to do business there. Maybe they offer lower taxes or no tax, but there is this annual report or franchise fee. I just think of it as a way for the state to make revenue. Now, the next thing is kind of a subset of that first point, but you need to know the deadlines. So it might depend on the state. For example, in Delaware, March 1st for the franchise tax. Other states might have the annual filing fee actually be due annually about 12 months or 11 months after your entity is formed. So you need to know those dates. Check the state website, keep these dates, or if you work with someone like Doola, we actually notify you of these dates and we do the filing for you. And then number three, this is a key part of state compliance. There's this thing called a registered agent, which is required in every state in the US for any type of entity. Now, I'll actually just quickly define what a registered agent is. Think of it as the liaison between your business, the state, and the IRS. It is this, effectively, it's a person in an office which has to be there during set hours to get mail and notices from the IRS or the government or the state. And you could technically do this, but I don't advise it for a couple reasons. One, you have to actually be in an office during these hours. Two, there's way better things you can do with your time. And three, they're very cheap. Like, usually this is cheap and you can outsource. And the other big reason why it is better to use a registered agent address is if you use your address, it goes on the public record. So I always prefer, for the anonymity, why share your information if you don't want to or don't have to? Use the registered agent address. So that's the third bucket. You have to keep your registered agent up to date and actually pay for a registered agent. I do not advise an individual be their own registered agent. And lastly, number three is ongoing bookkeeping or accounting. So here's the way I think about bookkeeping or accounting. You form a business, you then pay taxes or file taxes. In order to file your taxes, you need to know your numbers or have your books in order. So that's the bookkeeping or accounting. And technically, you can do nothing until tax season and just clean everything up at the end. But that's when you hear of these nightmares of disastrous books and catch-up bookkeeping fees. Or imagine if just along the way, every time revenue came in and costs go out and you make expenses and you buy things, everything's just kept in order. You know how much cash is coming in, how much cash is going out. You know how much profit you're generating. You know what you're spending on. That is bookkeeping or accounting. And that typically happens. There's this thing called monthly bookkeeping, where every month your books are closed and your cash flow and your P&L and your income statement. And then the other part, I think, is bookkeeping to me is just a form of analytics. You have analytics on your business, customer growth, revenue. And then I think of bookkeeping as the internal analytics in terms of the health of the business too. So that's the way I would define bookkeeping and accounting. They're used interchangeably. But to me, it's very important that you actually have clean financial records. And the biggest mistake people make, I'm kind of skipping ahead, but let me give the advice, is get a business bank account. So separate personal and business. And then just use a bookkeeping piece of software to connect to the bank account. And as long as all your transactions are flowing in through the business bank account, any cards that connect to the bank account, or you connect your cards to your bookkeeping software, that's half the battle, 90% of the battle, because all transactions will show up in this software. So please do not, in this day and age, use Google Sheets or pen and paper. There are free tools or low-cost tools that can do this. We have a free 30-day trial. Even if you don't use Doola, you can use another platform. Please have some tool in place for bookkeeping. Now, the next thing is you also want to be able to, in case an audit happens at the end of the year, show that your business was actually running and you have records and receipts. So if you're doing bookkeeping, this is fantastic because everything should be saved and stored there. You typically won't even need to actually take photos of paper receipts. But with a lot of bookkeeping software, you can take photos, upload them, and save them there too. And then the final thing here, again, I'll stress, is if you don't know where to start, you can just head to doola.com right here and you can try a free 30-day trial of our bookkeeping software. Again, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is today. If you haven't done bookkeeping, if you haven't set up a business bank account, don't stress. Just take action now and do these things. And you'll make the pain slightly more bearable and less in the future. Otherwise, your catch-up bookkeeping is going to be disastrous. Okay, so just to summarize again, there's federal compliance, there's state compliance, and then there's ongoing compliance or ongoing keeping your records clean, which helps you do the compliance at the end of the year. So you can't really skip that third piece. I mean, you can, but then you're just paying catch-up bookkeeping fees and you're adding more stress to the end of your year, which what's the point of doing that versus just doing things along the way? It's kind of like if you never floss your teeth or brush your teeth, you can go to the dentist and they can do a bunch of cleaning and there'll be cavities and your gums will be bleeding and they can fix things, but it's painful and there's a lot of cost and long term, not probably the most sustainable or healthy thing. I think the same thing for your business. You technically don't need to keep track of your bookkeeping or accounting, and end of year you can clean it up, but not the healthiest thing for your business. Is it long term sustainable? You're adding more stress, adding more cost. So I hope that flossing or teeth brushing analogy resonated with folks. Now, I want to share the three biggest mistakes I see. I kind of shared one, but let me go into a couple of these here. The first is if you forget to file your annual report, and this has happened, I've seen businesses do this, the state can administratively dissolve your business, meaning it's just going to shut it down. And that can be scary where you forget to file it, you're running your business, then you go and look and say, holy crap, my LLC got shut down. Imagine the impact to your customer base, to your reputation. So stay on top of that annual deadline. That's one of the key three buckets, the state compliance. Number two, and I did share this before, is not separating compliance between business and personal. Getting an LLC in the first place is big because it creates this separation between personal and business. If you don't have it, you're by default a sole proprietor. And if there's a lawsuit or something goes wrong, your personal assets can be seized. With the LLC, you actually create this veil of protection, this separation between personal and business. So similarly, separate personal and business banking too. That way it's very clear that this is a business. Otherwise, the IRS might say, hey, you're not really running a business. How are you calling these tax write-offs? You're running them through your personal accounts. So keep things clean. It also gives you the ability to get business banking, business credit, etc. And number three, the biggest mistake, ounce of prevention, pound of cure, is worrying about bookkeeping when tax season comes. Again, you can do it. I use the flossing analogy. You don't need to floss them when you go to the dentist. Might be cavities they can clean and they'll floss for you and it'll just be bad, but technically they can fix things then. Or you can just floss every day. And here's what I'll say. You could technically, flossing every week is better than not flossing at all for a year until the dentist. Flossing every month is even better than not doing it at all until going to the dentist. Same for bookkeeping. You don't need to look at your books every day, but even if you just do it quarterly versus not at all, or monthly versus not at all, which is the standard, that's infinitely better than doing nothing for a full year. So that would be my guidance there. Okay, now the final piece I want to touch on here is, one, if you made it this far and you're actually interested in keeping your business compliant, congrats. And I've actually found that's most entrepreneurs. No one wants to do things illegally and no one wants to fall out of compliance. So there's things that Doola can do to actually help you stay compliant automatically. First thing is you can use Doola bookkeeping software, but then more importantly, I don't believe that entrepreneurs should spend much time on any of this other than understanding the data, the strategic. The automation should be taken care of. You should not be spending time inputting numbers into your bookkeeping software. It should be done manually. So with that in mind, we built a business in a box. Everything from, let's go through these things here, getting your EIN, that first part of federal compliance. We then help you get a business bank account via an API integration. Your information is pre-filled. Then from there, you can automatically connect that to our bookkeeping software. So all transactions from Stripe or from Mercury or your Amex card all show up in bookkeeping software. Every month, our human bookkeepers can then help you close your books, reconcile, and then get your cash flow P&L income statement. And then your state filings are done. We handle your registered agent. We can even file your business taxes. All of the things we discussed, done for you. The entire goal is it's kind of like that Staples easy button. You click the button and voila, done for you. So Doola can actually help. Again, we have a free 30-day trial if you want to try our bookkeeping software. But if after hearing this, you're like, hey, I want that. I didn't realize that I needed a business in a box or my back office taken care of. Click that button scan the QR code and you can schedule a demo. You can also head to doola.com. And then the last thing is, I know there might be tons of questions along the way, like, hey, when is my annual report due? So my LLC doesn't get administratively dissolved. Or what type of bookkeeping should I be doing, cash versus accrual? We've actually built an AI co-founder where you can chat, and it's trained on the tens of thousands of founder journeys from Doola. So you can actually chat with this AI co-founder and ask these questions along the way versus going to Google or Reddit and finding migraine-inducing counterintuitive information on what to do. You can get source of truth. I like to joke, sometimes a lawyer tells you 11 things you shouldn't do. We'll tell you the one thing you should do. So we'll actually tell you what you should do. You can do that with the AI co-founder. Okay, that was a wrap today. I like brevity. I like being concise. I like being to the point. Your time is valuable. I hope this was helpful. And again, if there's any questions, you can drop them in the chat. If not, I really encourage folks, you can head to doola.com right here. You can scan this QR code. I'll actually pop it up on the big screen too here. And if anyone has any questions, you want to talk to someone on the team, you want to try out our AI co-founder, although you need a business on our platform to do that, schedule a demo. Again, information is power, information is knowledge. Schedule a demo. We are more than happy to support you on your journey. And if you are listening or have already formed your company with Doola, you can go in and check out our compliance calendar. You can chat with our AI co-founder to make sure that you are keeping your business 100% compliant. That is a wrap for today. Thank you all for tuning in. Again, if there's any questions, I will take them in the live chat. Otherwise, you can find me on social. You can ask me if you have any questions. And I'll finish with, it's never too late to turn your dream idea into your dream business. But remember, once you've launched, the compliance begins. And again, to summarize, there's federal compliance, there's state compliance, and there's ongoing bookkeeping and accounting. You can either DIY it, or we would love to help. So you can focus on what you do best while Doola handles the rest. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you next week.